The GitHub account, XTBC 18S1, where all the projects have been. There's a new project there now called Dwarf Underground. Here we are. And this has a static web page in it that we're going to try to break up into components. So it's all one big thing, and we're going to try to break it up into multiple components. Doesn't have any behavior. Don't need any crazy event handlers. Let's clone this thing. And when I say let's, I mean you do it too. So find this thing. Oh man, we got to use our computers. What kind of coding class is this? Make sure you don't clone it inside your Tatum Tots directory. Go up a level to your XTBC directory. Say git clone. Oh, by the way, I didn't slow down there. Once you open up that repo on GitHub, go to clone or download and just copy the URL there. Say git clone and paste that in, and it will automatically create a new folder for it. Make sure you're using the HTTPS links. Yeah, they're not going to work. The SSH links will not work on this network. What's that? Do it where all your projects are. So probably XTBC. For me, S1 for session 1. And make sure you change into Dwarf Underground once you clone it. Inside there, there's a file called static.html. I'm going to open that in my browser real quick so we can see what this is all about. Open static.html. Here we are. The Dwarf Underground, delving deep for the shiniest news. Got an ad here on the side for the last hammer you'll ever need. Mining diamonds are crushing the skulls of your enemies. The Smashmaster 4000 does it all. We got some clickbait down here. Single orcs in Indianapolis. You won't believe what's under this mountain. Mine 20% more gold with its one weird trick. Surprise for Indiana hobbits born before 1999. So yeah, we got a nice little Middle Earth blog here. So it kind of seems like we could break this into some components, doesn't it? That business at the top, that could be banner or header or something like that. Our ad could be a separate component. Seems like this main story here could be a component. Our whole clickbait section down here could be a component. Each individual one of those things could be a component. Or it seems like they're all really similar to each other, right? So what if those were all instances of the same component, like our LIs? So what if you could map over something and render all 4 of those and pass in the differences, like the different text and the different image, as props? Oh, I know that's a lot at once. Point is, we can do it. But let's have a look at what the heck is going on inside this thing. Let's open it up in code. Oops. Open it up in code. It looks like we have a number of files here already. We've got a public directory. We've got a source directory. We've already got a git ignore. We've got package.json, a readme, static CSS, static HTML, yarn.lock. So static CSS and static HTML, that's what I'm looking at here. What's this package.json business? Anybody ever seen that before? Anybody know what package.json is? So generally speaking, when you're using React, you're probably not just going to include a script tag that points to the React library like we did on CodePen. You're going to use a package manager to manage your dependencies. Anybody ever used a package manager in some other language? Like Ruby gems if you're using Ruby. I don't know what the name of the one for Python is. Someone this morning had used CocoaPods for iOS development. Heck, for your operating system, apt-get is one for Linux that you might use. Heck, the App Store is basically package management. But the idea is it's a way to use libraries that someone else wrote without having to manually manage all the dependencies, because if you're including someone else's library that depends on another library, you don't want to have to know what all of those things are. So there is a repository called NPM, Node Package Manager, that has lots of JavaScript packages. It has become basically the de facto package manager for the JavaScript ecosystem. NPM then is a command line utility for dealing with that. Comes with Node, but it kind of sucks a little bit. It's a lot better than it used to be, but it's still much slower than Yarn. So Yarn is a package manager that also uses the NPM repository. So you can use all the same packages, but it's a much faster thing. If you didn't install that as part of your setup, do it now, because you really do want to use that instead of NPM. Both are going to be pretty slow on this network, but NPM is going to be worse. So package.json tells us our dependencies. They're listed here. Dependencies are React and React DOM, and then we have dev dependencies of React scripts. And what that does is when we type npm install or yarn install, it's going to install those dependencies. So let's go ahead and do that. Try yarn install. Also yarn space I does the same thing. If you have it, it'll start doing things. If you don't, you'll see command not found or something, in which case try npm. But do consider installing yarn tonight. There is a link to it on. Now, it was really fast for me because I've installed these dependencies before on this computer. So it didn't take long. That's another difference with NPM. It doesn't cache as well. So if you go out to the website for the class, under setup instructions, under Node.js, it talks about NPM a little bit. If you scroll down far enough, it talks about Yarn. And it has a link to the Yarn website, and there's a getting started section. That's what you need if you want to install it. You don't have to do it right now, but you will want to do that probably before class tomorrow so that we don't have to deal with NPM. It's going to be bad enough having everyone installing all these packages on the same Wi-Fi network. Yarn will save us a little trouble. Yeah, it may almost act like you don't even have an internet connection. So mine installed. Aren't I special? So something changed. Now I have a folder called Node Modules here. So that's what happens. That's what yarn install and npm install do. They create a Node Modules folder in your project and put all the dependencies there. Now I only had React, React DOM, and React scripts. So this shouldn't have much in it. Holy crap! I'm still in the A's down here. Gosh dang, still in the B's. Oh my word. Okay, got a few dependencies. So it turns out our dependencies have lots of dependencies. Yo dog, I heard you like dependencies. So we're very glad that we're using a package manager and we don't have to find all those things ourselves. So we're including lots of external JavaScript libraries, but all we have to do is type npm install. So we're not committing all those things to the repository. Our repository would be way unnecessarily large. We just list them in package.json, and anyone who clones it can just type npm install and they get all that stuff. Good deal. So now that we have all those, notice that package.json also has a section for scripts. It has a start script, a build script, a test script, and eject script. Start sounds fun. To run that, you can just do yarn start or npm start. Yarn start and npm start should do the same thing. If install did not work, this will not work because the start script runs React scripts start, and React scripts won't be there if you haven't installed your dependencies. So let's try yarn start. And oh, yeah, I did this morning too. You didn't see that? Let's try yarn start, like I said. Yarn start. All right. So going back to my terminal, what it did is actually start running a web server, running on localhost 3000. And then it automatically opened a browser tab to localhost 3000. So this is my React app running on localhost. No longer can we just open an HTML page in the browser because we have a whole build process now. Because although React is just JavaScript, we're using JSX, which means we have to compile our JavaScript. Transpile is usually the word we use because we're not actually going down to like machine code. So they'll say transpile from JSX to real JavaScript. So since that's happening, we have to actually have a web browser running. So it'll do that, and check this out. Notice it says to get started, edit source app.js and save to reload. So we have a source folder here. Inside there we have app.js, app.css, app.test.js, index.css, index.js, logo SVG. Here's app.js, which it said to look at. And we have a component. This looks familiar. Class app extends component. It's got a render method. And it just returns some JSX. It's a div. It's got a class name, not class. Inside there's another div. Has an image, which is the variable logo. I see up here import logo from this SVG. Interesting. It says, welcome to React. What if I just edit this H2? Welcome to React, sucka. Save my changes. Did you see that? My browser just updated. I didn't even hit refresh. Well, wonders never cease. Yes, friends, the development server that you start with NPM start or yarn start will also watch for changes that you make to your source code. And if you make any, it'll just go ahead and refresh the browser for you. It's a good friend like that. So now we've got a whole tab of our terminal taken up by this web server. So keep this in mind. I can always just open another tab, and I'm back in that folder. So I can still run commands even though my my server's running in the other tab. No big deal. So what else is going on here? What's public? So public has index.html, which has a lot of comments. Read those for your entertainment. They do have some useful information in them. But notice inside the body, I've just got one element, a div with an ID of root. Because we need one empty element in the DOM, right? Where we're going to stick our React component. Then under source, let's look at index.js. And all index.js has is React DOM render. Here's our component. And here's the element from the DOM that we're replacing with it. That last piece that we must have, right? Then we got a bunch of import statements, including import app from app. Now what the heck is going on here? So we're using ES6. So we have ES6 modules. So for a long time, there was no good way to require one JavaScript file from another. You just had to put script tags for every script that you wanted. So your HTML just got loaded up with script tags. It was awful. Some folks tried to write libraries to handle this, like require.js, stuff like that. So there were a few different module systems that people had built in ES5 and earlier. And they all did it a little differently. But ES6 finally standardized on a way to do modules. And this is it. This is how it works. So top line here, import React from React. Okay, import React. That means that within this file, I'm going to refer to it as React, capital R React, from the string React. Now, where's it going to look for that? Where would you guess? Where's it going to look for something called React? Yeah. The JSON file? Decent guess. Node modules. So the dependencies listed here, once you actually run npm install or yarn install, get downloaded to node modules. So you just pass a string like this, it's going to assume it's a package name. I mean, that's not technically why this works. but that's what's going to happen. It's going to look in node modules for a folder called React. So we're importing React from React. I'm in the different file now. I was in index, wasn't I? Yeah. So import React from React, import React DOM from React DOM, and then import app from, this doesn't look like a package name. This is a path, right? Dot's the current folder, right? So dot slash means I expect to find a file called app in the same folder that I'm in right now. Turns out this means app.js, but if it's a JS file, you don't need to put the extension in an import statement. So this will import from the file app.js. So how does it know what to get out of here? The class? That is what it's importing, but how does it know that? Also a very reasonable guess. Turns out I could put fish sticks here and it would still work, as long as I change this to fish sticks. It's going to import exactly the same thing. Turns out the name I use here doesn't actually matter. So how do I know what I'm going to import from here? I'll give you just a second to hunt through that and take a guess. Right. So I'm exporting app, which is my class, and I say export default. What that means is that if I don't specify otherwise when I import, that's the thing that's going to be imported. So again, you could name it something else on this side, but this is going to import whatever the default export was from that file. So what if it's not the default? Yeah, so that you saw in app.js. I import React, comma, curly brace component from React. So component is a named export from React. React is the default, so I don't put any curly braces around it, and I can name it whatever I want on this side. You're going to confuse yourself if you don't name it that. And in fact, for React, if you're doing a React app, you pretty much need to import that as capital R React, or a lot of stuff's going to break. But I'm also importing component, which is a named export. So why? Because now I can say class app extends component instead of React.component. If I didn't import component separately, I would have to put React.component, which isn't that hard to do. So you could just do that. But a lot of times you'll see people do that. They'll add the named export component, and then they'll just extend the component. Does the same thing. So that's a very brief overview of how ES6 modules work. What about these things? CSS and an SVG, an image for heaven's sake. We're importing those. So it turns out you can kind of import other things as JavaScript inside a JavaScript file. So if I import this SVG, I'm importing it to a local variable called logo. And now in my JSX, I can say image source equals the JavaScript expression logo, and that's going to be that SVG file. And that's totally going to work. Kind of weird, but it works. And if it's CSS, we can import that, and now that CSS is going to be there. This stuff works because of the build system that we're using here. So we mentioned that we have to run everything through Babel in order to get browsers to understand it, right? Babel's the thing that can translate JSX down to real JavaScript. We didn't touch Babel, but it's working anyway. And that's because our package JSON has React scripts, which just manages all this stuff for us. It manages our entire build system without our having to know how to configure it. And we're going to see a little more about how that works later when we start building something from scratch. But that's why that stuff is just being taken care of for us without us having to worry about it. But it is something that has to happen. We're just doing it the easy way. So that stuff just works. Pretty neat. So if we wanted to start trying to rebuild Dwarf Underground is here in static.html. So we could import static CSS and then just start building components out of this. But where's the fun in watching me do that? I can tell your fingers are just itching to start typing. So it seems like that might be a fun thing for you to do. We got through a lot more explaining React this afternoon than we did this morning, frankly, because I just plain did a better job of it. But it is a lot. It's a totally different way of thinking about this stuff. So if this stuff just doesn't make any sense, and if you have no idea where to even start with this Dwarf Underground business, if you just Google React tutorial, since Slack isn't working, the first result will be on reactjs.org, the official React site. Tutorial, Intro to React. And there's a nice tutorial there. So your homework is to do this tutorial if none of this makes sense yet, or if you just want to reinforce some of these ideas. Everything else is bonus credit. So for bonus credit, what you could do is actually modify this Dwarf Underground project and break it up into components. To start, you could just try pasting all this HTML inside your app component, at least make that much work. So you can't just paste it in there and have it work instantly, right? Because of class and class name. And there just might be some empty elements like inputs and things like that that need self-closing tags. Put that / before the angle bracket. But start there and see where you can get. Try to make another component for just the header section. Now we've seen kind of how to create a new component. Looks like you'd create a new JS file. I would name it exactly what you're naming your component, capital letter and all. As gross as it is to make file names have capital letters in React, that's the convention. So name it exactly what your class is named. So like capital H header.js. And then inside there, you do something very much like this. You're going to have to import React. You're going to have to make a class. You're going to want to export it. And then if you're going to stick the header inside app, you'll need to import header inside app. But you can also put more than one component inside a single file. You could totally have more than one class in the same file if that's a bit much. Now, we haven't talked about separating different components into different files and so on. So again, the React tutorial might give you some clues as to that. And if it doesn't give you enough, find another tutorial. See what you can do. See if you can possibly break this thing up into multiple components. So again, the homework is to do that tutorial. Bonus credit, break up Dwarf Underground into multiple components. Dana, is that already published on the website or not?
No, but I can post it right now.
Okay. Sure. Let's do that. So we can talk about the different levels of bonus work. It'll take a minute for it to publish even after she publishes it. But basically, see if you can break it up into 5 components. Then see if you can break it up into 10. Why not? If you want to get really ambitious, do something really clever. Like we said, all these clickbait links at the bottom. Those kind of look like they're all the same thing. What if we made one component that represents one of those things? And then we rendered all 4 of them using map. See if you can do that. A little bit of a mind blower. That's why it's bonus credit. And I think there was another one that was like try to get clicking on comments to do something, to like open up a form or something, I think. When it's on the website, we can see it. So anyway, that's your homework. That's a gentle introduction to React. We're going to be doing React the whole rest of the class, so there will be plenty of time for repetition to reinforce these ideas. So see what you can do. All right, questions? All right. I know you can do it. So suppose you were wanting to make your copy of Dwarf Underground on your repository. How would you do that? Well, if you've already cloned it, the origin is going to point to the version on XTBC 18S1, right? So you'd probably have to remove origin, right? Get remote, remove origin, and then go through the usual steps of pushing it up to yours. Or if you hadn't cloned it yet, you could hit fork and make your own copy and clone that. Probably be the easiest thing. Click fork, that'll create it in your GitHub world, and then you can clone your fork of it. So you can do it that way too. Whatever you like. All right. Thank you.